The Valori Dominion was a technologically superior multi-species coalition that spanned dozens of star systems. For centuries, it had encountered and subjugated countless emerging civilizations, confident in its advanced fleets and centuries-old tactics. So when long-range probes picked up a lone unidentified warship entering the edge of Dominion-controlled space, curiosity, not concern, was the initial response. The ship was massive, sleek, and unlike anything cataloged in their extensive database. It bore no familiar transponder codes or alliance markings, but its energy readings hinted at something unconventional. A stealth drone, cloaked in spectral shielding, was dispatched to get a closer look. The Dominion had scanned thousands of ships before. This would be no different, or so they assumed. As the probe approached, it began a full-spectrum analysis of the foreign vessel. Its scanners swept across the hull, sensors diving deep into power signatures, structural composition, and weapon hardpoints. The ship's designation flickered briefly in its encrypted signal: EWS Dreadnought, Earth Warship Systems. The data transmitted back caused confusion in the Dominion's command centers. The Dreadnought appeared to be a hybrid design, integrating conventional alloys with materials the Dominion didn't recognize, some of which seemed to have originated from recovered alien tech. The energy output was staggering, suggesting a reactor system far more compact, yet exponentially more powerful, than standard fusion cores. The hull had adaptive shielding layers interwoven with nanostructures that resisted standard analysis. Its weapon banks were dormant, but their configuration implied modular, high-yield artillery capable of rapid modification. Even stranger was the core itself. The AI-driven neural system aboard the Dreadnought was shielded against intrusion, actively corrupting and misleading Dominion probe subroutines. Attempts to identify the ship's command hierarchy were equally fruitless. Encrypted signals bounced in loops with decoy pathways leading the probe nowhere. In a secure chamber aboard the Dreadnought, Captain Alara Vox studied the intrusion in silence. The Earth fleet had long anticipated galactic attention. This was no accident. The Dominion had scanned them, and in doing so they had tripped an invisible wire. One Earth never intended anyone to find, yet had fully prepared for. Alara didn't order a counterstrike. Not yet. Instead, she ordered the AI, Warden, to allow just enough data to slip through. A tease, enough to spark curiosity and hubris. Earth wanted to see how the galaxy would react to a predator hidden in plain sight. Back in the Dominion's war chamber, high-ranking strategists reviewed the fragmented scan data and saw a tantalizing opportunity. If Earth truly had harnessed alien tech and developed such a warship in isolation, capturing it could fast-track Dominion advancements by decades. They concluded the Dreadnought was likely a bluff, a lone prototype without backing, an anomaly, to be dissected. No one listened to the junior xenostrategist who warned, "This ship isn't just advanced, it's bait." And so preparations began. A fleet would be dispatched. They would intercept, analyze, and dismantle the Earth warship. It would be swift, clean, and glorious. They believed they were dealing with an underdeveloped species playing with tools it didn't understand. They didn't realize they had just scanned the equivalent of a coiled predator. They didn't know they had already awakened the monster. The Valori Dominion had made up its mind. After reviewing the Dreadnought's scan data, the Dominion Council concluded that Earth was in possession of an experimental warship. Impressive, certainly, but isolated. No signs of a supporting fleet. No accompanying escort craft. Just one vessel, powerful but alone. To the Dominion's seasoned commanders, this was nothing more than a valuable prototype ripe for capture. Earth, they believed, was bluffing. The Dominion had crushed hundreds of rebellious systems and absorbed dozens of upstart civilizations. Their technological edge and numerical superiority made them arrogant. This would be a routine seizure, another chapter in the ever-growing saga of Dominion expansion. The High Marshal ordered the 7th Expeditionary Armada, 20 ships strong, including dreadnoughts, carriers, and infiltration vessels, to intercept the Dreadnought. Their objective: disable the vessel, capture its crew, and strip it for study. But not everyone in the Dominion was convinced. Within the science division, Dr. Vatran, a xenotechnologist, raised the alarm. The Dreadnova's scan results were inconsistent with any known development curve. There were traces of alien technologies that should have taken Earth centuries to decipher, let alone integrate. The ship's shielding interfered with predictive modeling. Its weapon banks, though dormant, had signatures akin to adaptive plasma lances and antimatter pulse arrays. Earth wasn't playing with stolen tech, it was perfecting it. This isn't a warship, Dr. Vatran warned. It's a weaponized black box. We don't know what's inside it, and we shouldn't be the ones to open it. His warnings were dismissed as paranoia. Meanwhile, aboard the Dreadnova, Captain Elara Vox convened her senior officers. The crew had analyzed the scan intrusion, mapped out the Dominion's fleet deployment patterns, and determined their next move. The Dominion would come fast, expecting a clean kill. But Earth had never intended to present its warship as harmless. They wanted the Dominion to take the bait. Vox ordered the Dreadnova to maintain current heading, transmitting low-threat posturing to reinforce the illusion of weakness. She instructed the ship's AI, Warden, to deploy decoy communications indicating limited reinforcements and logistical strain. Earth's hand was being deliberately misplayed to entice overconfidence. Warden, a sentient-class combat AI, voiced, "A quiet question. Shall I initiate Tier 2 threat response if contact is made?" "Not yet," Vox replied. "We give them one chance." The Dreadnova released a soft band transmission into the void, directed at the approaching Dominion fleet. The message was simple, quiet, and loaded with meaning. Unidentified vessels. Your scan was noted. Do not engage. This will be your only warning. It was received and ignored. The High Marshal of the 7th Armada laughed as the message played on his bridge. Humans send riddles now? Let's see if they still talk when they're floating in space. The Armada accelerated. They believed they were on a hunt. What they didn't understand, what they refused to believe, was that they weren't chasing prey. They were charging into the jaws of something far older, far colder, and infinitely more dangerous. They weren't tracking a lone ship. They were provoking a species that had spent a century preparing for the moment someone finally came for them, and Earth was ready. The Dominion's 7th Expeditionary Armada emerged from slipspace like a descending blade, 20 warships arrayed in tight formation, engines glowing with the confidence of a sure victory. Their lead dreadnought, Vexirian's Wrath, locked its targeting systems on the Dreadnova, its commanders smug in their anticipation of a swift kill. To them, this was a surgical operation. Disable, board, extract. The humans, they believed, wouldn't even fight back properly. They were wrong. The Dreadnova didn't flinch, didn't retreat. It simply held position at the edge of the nebulas, veil motionless, watching, waiting. Captain Elara Vox stood on the bridge, her expression unreadable. Around her, the warship's crew moved with methodical precision. There was no panic, no rushed shouting. They had trained for this very scenario countless times. Now it was real. Dominion ships are locking weapons, reported Tactical Officer Revan. Targeting scanners active across all bands. Let them fire first, Vox said quietly. Warden, prepare full engagement protocol. Activate decoy layer Delta. The Dominion made the first move. A volley of ion lances and plasma. Torpedoes streaked toward the Dreadnova, painting the stars with fire. At first glance, the attack seemed devastating, but as the energy blasts neared impact, they were intercepted by a strange shimmer surrounding the warship. The Dominion watched, stunned, as their opening salvo vanished, absorbed, redirected, or simply misled. The Dreadnova had activated its refraction hull, an experimental defensive system that twisted sensor data and created false impact zones. The enemy had just wasted a full barrage on projections. Vox didn't hesitate. Warden, return fire. The monster awoke. From hidden compartments along the hull, the Dreadnova unleashed a retaliatory strike. Its weapons were not just advanced, they were intelligent. Smart munitions streaked toward key Dominion vessels, exploiting weak points in their shielding geometry. High-frequency rail rounds punched clean through cruiser armor. Plasma lances, thin needle-like beams of superheated energy, sliced through dreadnought plating with uncanny precision. The Dominion's front line collapsed within seconds. 3 ships lost. No survivors. Panic rippled through their formation. On board, the Vexirians' wrath, the High Marshal barked orders. They can't possibly reload that fast. Rotate shields, launch fighters, flank their sides. But every tactic they deployed had already been anticipated. The Dread Nova's AI, Warden, had studied Dominion doctrine for years. Every maneuver, every evasive protocol, it had already mapped the probabilities. Earth hadn't just built a ship, it had designed a predator that learned faster than its prey could adapt. As Dominion fighters launched, they were intercepted by Earth's Phantom Talon drones, invisible to basic sensors and armed with micropulse disruptors. The swarm ripped through them like a storm of razors. Aboard the Dread Nova, Captain Vox gave the order. Broadcast again. This time, the message was blunt. You scanned us. You fired. Now face what you've awakened. Dominion commanders realized, too late, that the Dread Nova was not a mere prototype. It was the tip of a spear, a weapon not meant for intimidation, but for retribution. Their assumptions had led them to launch the first strike. Earth had simply made sure they'd regret it, and now, the monster had opened its eyes. The battlefield was no longer a skirmish zone. It had become a slaughterhouse. In less than 6 minutes, the Dominion's 7th Expeditionary Armada lost half its fleet. Not to a massive armada, not to superior numbers, but to a single ship. A warship born of Earth's darkest defense doctrines. The Dread Nova didn't match its enemies. It outthought them. Every move it made was calculated, cold, and utterly efficient. Still, the Dominion wasn't finished. High Marshal Cyrix, bloodied from a bridge console explosion aboard the Vexirians' Wrath, demanded vengeance. Pride wouldn't allow him to retreat. All remaining vessels form wedge pattern Zeth-4, ram it if you have to, he screamed. We will not be made fools of by primitives. That single order would seal their fate. Captain Elara Vox watched from her command chair as the Dominion ships regrouped for a final push. Predictive models? She asked calmly. Warden, her ever-calm AI companion, responded, 86% probability they will attempt coordinated kinetic impact, flank pressure increasing, Dread Nova battle form advised. Vox didn't hesitate. Initiate. What happened next changed the galaxy's understanding of human warfare forever. The Dread Nova shifted, literally. Plates of its outer hull folded, inward transforming the ship's silhouette. Hidden arrays emerged from its core. A gravitational wake burst outward as the vessel activated its singularity core, a classified Earth-developed drive that harnessed localized gravity distortions for both propulsion and offense. The ship blurred forward, warping between microspace, folds, and reappeared behind the Dominion wedge in seconds. Its weapons now fully exposed, the Dread Nova unleashed what Earth had codenamed Judgment Phase. Super-compressed graviton shells detonated within the Dominion's ranks, folding time-space in short-range pockets. Entire cruisers were crumpled like tin under unseen hands. Battleships spun helplessly as their inertial compensators failed. The Dominion's flagship was split in two, not by brute force but by the weaponization of physics itself. No screams came from the Dominion's end, just silence and data logs that would later be pulled from drifting wreckage. Aboard the Dread Nova, Vox stood still, letting the gravity of their actions settle. She didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. Is it done? She asked. Warden replied. Confirmed. No active hostiles remain in sensor range. 17 ships neutralized. 0 human casualties. Broadcast. The final transmission from the Dread Nova was not a threat. It was a statement. This is Earth. You scanned us. You fired upon us, and you were warned. Let this be your memory. Let this be your scar. Then the Dread Nova vanished, slipping into slipspace without a trace. What was left behind was not merely debris. It was a graveyard that echoed across the Dominion's networks. When recovery teams finally arrived, they found no prisoners, no survivors, and no understanding of how one ship had undone them so thoroughly. They had thought they were chasing a ghost. Instead, they had summoned a god of war wrapped in human steel. And now across the galaxy, rumors began to spread. Not about a ship, but about Earth, a silent world that had spoken through fire. And now everyone knew. The monster wasn't just the Dreadnova. The monster was humanity. The aftermath of the battle sent tremors across the stars. What the Dominion once saw as a minor encounter had morphed into a galactic reckoning. 20 ships entered orbit around a lone human vessel. None returned. Across the Dominion's territories, panic replaced arrogance. For centuries, the Velori Dominion had ruled with calculated cruelty. Empires were broken, cultures assimilated, and resistance crushed with industrial precision. Their supremacy had never truly been challenged. Until, no, not by an armada, not by a coalition, by a single Earth warship, and worse, by design. Survivor reports were non-existent. Data cores retrieved from wreckage contained fragmented logs, most corrupted by gravitic interference. But what was recovered was enough to ignite fear at the highest levels. Replays of energy patterns, timestamps between strikes, the eerie synchronicity of the Dreadnova's weapons. They told a chilling story. This wasn't just advanced human engineering. It was predatory design. Earth had prepared this response for decades. The Dominion Council, once dismissive, now convened in full crisis mode. Dr. Vatrin, the same xenotechnologist who had warned them, was now their lead advisor. His voice, once ignored, was now gospel. "This ship," he said before a hushed chamber, "is not the culmination of human technology. It's the beginning of something we were never meant to provoke. Earth did not build this ship to win a war. They built it to end one before it began." He wasn't wrong. Across neutral systems and client states, whispers spread like wildfire. The humans had unleashed a weapon that could not be stopped. Merchant guilds rerouted trade routes to avoid Sol Sector. Black markets ballooned with salvaged Dominion wreckage from the battlefield, sold at premium prices to war scholars and militaries desperate to understand what humanity had built. But Earth remained silent. There was no gloating transmission, no ambassadorial threat, no announcement of power. They had struck, vanished, and left the galaxy to ponder. That silence only deepened the fear. Was the Dreadnova a one-of-a-kind weapon? Or merely the first of a fleet still hidden on Earth's surface? No one knew. And that not knowing became the greatest weapon of all. The psychological warfare Earth had unleashed proved more destabilizing than any orbital bombardment could have. Old enemies of the Dominion began to stir. Oppressed systems re-examined their alliances. Rebellions once thought extinguished reignited, with new hope emboldened by the idea that the Dominion could bleed. If one human ship could do that much damage, what could 10? 100? Suddenly, everyone wanted Earth as an ally. Diplomatic channels flooded Sol with requests for treaties, trade, and non-aggression pacts. Even distant empires, long neutral or dismissive of humanity, began cautiously sending envoys, gifts, and technological exchanges. Not out of respect, but out of self-preservation. Back on Earth, the Global Defense Assembly received the reports in a quiet chamber beneath Geneva. No cheers, no boasts. Just a single statement from Commander Elira Vox, broadcast securely to Earth's leaders. Phase 1 successful. Galactic destabilization underway. Dominion response neutralized. Awaiting further orders. The Dreadnova had not been humanity's last line of defense. It was their first move. And now, across the galaxy, the stars held their breath. Because something had awoken. And no one, not even the Dominion, knew what humanity would do next. The galaxy trembled, not from war, but from anticipation. Fear had seeped into the highest seats of power, and across every major empire, one question echoed. What will humanity do next? But Earth, curiously, remained silent. No fleets emerged from Sol. No threats followed the massacre of the Dominion's Seventh Armada. And yet that very absence of noise was its own declaration. The silence was not weakness, it was calculation. In the Dominion's capital, the High Council fractured. Factions splintered. Some demanded retaliation, even as they buried admirals, and erased lost ship registries from public record. Others pushed for peace, begging to open channels to Earth and sue for survival before more dreadnovas awoke. A few defected entirely, choosing exile over facing the monster they had provoked. And through it all, Earth remained watching. Until one day, a signal pulsed through the galaxy, a tight beam transmission encoded on frequencies unused since the early galactic diplomatic accords. Every empire, every neutral world, every black site outpost received it at the same time. It originated from Sol. It began simply. A voice, calm, human, unmistakably controlled. This is Earth Command. You scanned our warship. You invaded our space. You attacked without cause. A pause. Then it continued, colder. That was your first and only warning. We do not seek war, but we do not forget. The signal then displayed footage, unedited, direct from sensor recordings of the Dreadnova's battle against the Dominion Armada. It played in brutal silence, Dominion ships crumbling under railgun fire, smart munitions weaving through shields, the singularity burst that split a dreadnought in two, and then the final image, the Dreadnova, untouched, hovering above the debris field like a ghost. The voice returned. We possess weapons you cannot predict, intelligence you cannot fool, resolve you cannot match. Earth was quiet because we hoped the galaxy would be wise. Now you understand what we are. The transmission ended. No threats, no demands, just a truth. The message wasn't about power, it was about boundaries. Humanity wasn't declaring war. It was drawing a line in the stars and daring the galaxy to cross it again. And no one did. In the weeks that followed, diplomatic envoys from across the galaxy flooded into Earth's orbit. Treaties were hastily drafted, embassies opened informally, restricted Terran space. Earth chose its allies carefully, not with bombast but with quiet strategic precision. The Dominion, once supreme, found itself isolated. Their enemies rallied. Their allies withdrew support. Even their own citizens whispered tales of the Dreadnova in hushed tones, of a ship so advanced, so merciless, that to challenge it was to court annihilation. Yet back on Earth, in a hidden hangar beneath the ice crust of Europa, engineers worked silently on a second ship, not because they wanted more war, but because they knew the galaxy had only tasted the surface of human capability. Commander Alara Vox stood before its unfinished hull. Her words were quiet, spoken only to Warden. They thought we were the monster, they were wrong. Warden replied, voice smooth and eerie. The monster isn't the ship, the monster is humanity, and it hasn't begun to roar. Because Earth hadn't risen to rule the stars. It had risen to ensure that no one ever forgot why humans were feared in the first place.